All right, we are live here. Let's make some funny faces and let's see. Let's start with how scared you are of your haunted hotel in Oklahoma City.
Not at all, because I'm not in the haunted one.
So like teams stopped staying there, huh? At the haunted hotel.
There were new hotels constructed that were more suitable for teams to stay in. Also,
I mean,
so
why wouldn't the ghosts? Why wouldn't the ghosts just move there if it's nicer?
You would think, yeah, they would go to the nice hotel too, right? Like they're not, they're not fools, right?
Maybe they just can't afford the new place.
Hey, before we start, one public service announcement.
Okay. Okay. All right. I'm glad we did that before we started because that can't be part of the official show. All right. Let's do a podcast here.
All right.
Welcome on to a mid-January edition of Hollinger and Duncan. And I realize, John, we've been far too positive on this show recently. And I'm also far too loud on my microphone. Just turn that down. And we have not eliminated nearly enough teams from the playoffs. So we're going to get to a slew of those, which is generally just a vehicle for kind of talking about these teams and where they are and when they might finally emerge from the darkness at some future point. But first, wanted to get into just a few things that have happened recently. Let's start with this trade. This is actually my first chance to talk about it. Nick Richards for Josh Okogie.
No-brainer for Charlotte, right? Like, Josh Okogie might be better than Nick Richards in a vacuum. And
really? Whoa, okay. All right, continue. We'll dig into that more.
And you get essentially 3 seconds. They give up a pick that is likely to be around 50 in the 2025 draft. Get 3 future seconds that are likely to be more valuable for a player who I don't think there was a reasonable expectation that they could have gotten anything for him, right? Like to get 3 seconds out of Nick Richards' quasi-expiring deal, I think is a massive win.
Yeah, non-guaranteed for $5 million next year. Now, part of what Phoenix is paying for is the savings going from $8 million down to $5 million with Nick Richards
and
Josh Okogie. Yeah, and
there was another element to the savings too that nobody has talked about. By trading a future pick for a pick that will be again about 50 next year, they have filled next year's 14th roster spot, I believe, with a rookie minimum contract rather than a veteran minimum contract, which between tax and repeater will save them several million on top of the money they saved this year.
Yeah. Now, to be clear, we are not criticizing Matt Ishbia and the Suns for being cheap. It certainly makes sense to save money where you can, but they've been shooting money out of a fire hose. I don't begrudge them trying to claw back a couple of million. And most of this deal was about Nick Richards himself. Yusuf Nurkic had been basically retired from the rotation of late. Then supposedly, I think it was an illness that had him out. I don't even know if it's like a real illness.
Scrub-like
I thought
symptoms?
Nurkic, yeah. Maybe he got it from Jimmy Butler. So, but Nurkic, I still think he's better than some of the guys they've had. Maybe the suspension that he got was the last straw or something. He's been like getting DNP'd even. They've been starting Plumlee. Shockingly, that hasn't been an elixir for them. So I do think if they're not going to play Nurkic or they feel like he just can't do it anymore, like Nick Richards as someone who actually will really get on the offensive glass and has some shot blocking ability and some ability to go catch an alley-oop. Like I think he is a slight upgrade there. I think he will help them more than Josh Okogie. I disagree with you on Okogie being better than him just because Okogie like can't shoot and you never will be able to shoot, and that there's just like Nick Richards can be at least a semi-decent center for them going forward, whereas Okogie just like kind of messes up your whole offense, even if he does provide some guard skills defensively. I mean, I don't know how much the listeners really need us to get into like who's better, Josh Okogie or Nick Richards.
We should do a whole show about
I
that.
think Richards will. Yeah, and Richards under contract for next year as well for $5 million, so relatively cost controlled. So yeah, but I mean, I think like Richards is one of the few. His market, and this is I think something we're going to see a fair amount of, is inflated just because he makes so little. That all these like the Suns, if they're going to trade Okogie, they're limited to taking back someone making $8 million or less. How many guys who are available and also make less than $8 million could actually contribute for them? Probably not that many. So that's part of why this price ends up being what it was. And so at least the Suns get some kind of disposable asset back to use for next year, or for a cheap contract if they want it that way too.
And in the big picture, though, I mean, how sad is this that they use it? They didn't trade the 2031 first. They kept that one, but they traded their limited draft capital. They're out of seconds now, right? Except for the one pick in 25 that they're going to use on a rookie contract that we just discussed.
Yeah.
And they used it to acquire somebody whose big selling point was basically that he's less shitty than the shitty players they already had. Right? I mean, like that, it's not like, is he a starting caliber player? No. Right? Does he move the needle? No. He's just, he's not washed like Nurkic and Plumlee. And he's not a rookie like Osoi Guedara.
Yeah. I mean, it's not
they
like
traded for a backup 5 to be their starter.
Yeah.
Right?
No, it's sobering. I mean, even as someone who, like, when Nick Richards actually first started playing, even going back to like the Hoop Summit, I thought he was a guy who was an NBA player. I think a lot of people didn't see him as that. I think he clearly is. Like, he has like the physical tools at center. He can do something on the offensive glass, can dunk a little bit. I think really the thing that's making him not a great starter is he hasn't been amazing defensively. Maybe it's possible that Mike Budenholzer. Remember also that Charles Lee has a really close relationship with Mike Budenholzer, and surely they must have discussed Richards, and maybe Budenholzer can get more out of him than's been gotten out of him in the past. We've seen that with some rim protecting centers from him before, though notably not anyone on this roster.
Yes.
So like, I mean, I do think that Richards is a better shot blocker than the guys that they've had, but he certainly hasn't been a difference maker on a bad Charlotte team, and he doesn't have experience in high level games and all that. So yeah, it's definitely not something that's ultimately, I think, going to move the needle. I mean, maybe they just have internal analytics that say center has just been absolutely killing us. We have the worst center play in the league, and even getting someone who's competent is going to really lift us. I guess that's possible, but I agree. I mean, would you have like not done this as Phoenix, or is that where you're at on this, or?
There's always the temptation in Phoenix's shoes to just keep going down the direction they're going, but at some point you do have to stop. I just
yeah, but that point is when they trade Devin Booker and Kevin Durant. That's which, if I were them, I actually would be totally exploring right now. But I mean,
that's the move, is to trade Booker and Durant, and I don't think they're organizationally at that point yet, but I think
of course
once
not.
they,
of course not.
Once they complete their 40 and 42 or whatever it is season that they have, I think it's going to be a long, hard discussion. Yeah, just what are we doing here?
Yeah, because even I was talking about this with the Warriors with Slater the other day, that even if they make some moves and they can go 25-15 over the final 40 games, that's like what, a 46 win team still fighting in the play-in, and maybe you feel like you have enough talent to, I mean, they're not going to beat Oklahoma City, obviously. Maybe they feel like they have enough talent to compete with anyone else. I don't know. But it's just like they're going to be a bad seed. Like it would be, they would have to go, like 30-10 the rest of the way to not, which is not going to happen.
Yeah.
So yeah, you wrote just more in general about this Pacific Division quandary, and I guess the Warriors have been in the news lately because Steph Curry, Draymond Green, and Steve Kerr have all said essentially like we're not putting pressure on the organization. It wouldn't make sense to do a dumb all-in move for where we're at right now. What was your reaction as a former front office man to those comments?
I was actually surprised that the players were saying that. I wasn't surprised. I was a little surprised that the coach. I mean, the coach usually has a pretty short-term view too.
Yeah.
But
and Steve, was a GM before, so he understands that view a little bit better.
For the players themselves to say that was shocking to me, and I wonder if something got lost in translation there, where they were saying it might not be worth it for specific opportunities that are available right now, but if Lauri Markkanen becomes available this summer, maybe that's a different conversation. Like the road not taken.
I think that's exactly what it is.
Is Markkanen, right? Yeah. And you could argue that the team wasn't good enough anyway, and it wouldn't have mattered.
Yeah. Well, Giannis is obviously the other pie in the sky for them. He and Steph Curry having the ties on the agent level, and the Bucks not looking like they're much better off than the Warriors right now. But I mean that was actually something I mentioned to Slater, is just it would be nice for the Warriors to just, if they could just make the playoffs this year, then at least they're more attractive as a possible destination for a Giannis than if they are completely out of the playoffs again. Even though you might only win 4 more games or something, that 4 games could matter a lot in terms of their perception.
Yeah. Yep. Especially if they could steal around like they did against Sac 2 years ago.
Yeah. Well, I think they'll be playing a slightly better team than that Kings team. But yeah, I think I wouldn't say
California State Championship, right? The Western Conference play-in tournament.
Now the Clippers are too good. They won't be in it. Yeah, that's going to be hilarious if and when the Clippers finish with a better record than any of these teams. I guess going back to what you said about being lost in translation, though, I don't think it was. I think that it wasn't don't try. Steph said in that same thing, we're always aware of opportunities, but basically what he's saying is he's not going to put pressure on the front office to make a bad deal, and they keep him abreast of what's out there. And it seems like there's nothing that is out there that he knows about that he was hey, you should have done it, and they didn't do it. Yeah. Which I agree with. I don't think there really is anything out there that they should have done.
Yeah, I find that entirely believable.
Yeah. Yeah. But it is, I would say, remarkable in contrast to, say, LeBron James, who just is constantly putting pressure on his teams at every turn. And for Steph to just say, no, I understand, kind of how this works for the team standpoint, and I'm going to trust it. The trust that he has given ownership and management to do their jobs, and even Steve Kerr to do their jobs, it is pretty remarkable for a modern superstar. The one thing he hasn't done is Tim Duncan style, taking $6 million. He still is getting paid as much as he can at every turn. But I think he also even understands that there is a trade-off with that as well. All right. Well, you ready to eliminate a team for the playoffs? Or is there anything else you want to hit from that Pacific Division column that you thought really stood out?
No, I think you summarized it. I mean, people should definitely still click on it and read it.
Well, there's 4 other teams.
Reloaded a few times in different browsers, I think, to really get the whole understanding of it. But
here's the state of things.
Okay.
Yeah, this is the state of things right now. We've only eliminated 2 teams from the playoffs: Utah and Washington. The last of them being on November 26th. So there is ample fodder, and I will give it to you to begin.
Well, I just want to give credit to these teams that, even without us pushing them, have done a spectacular job of eliminating themselves. I mean, they've really, really
that's right.
it up.
Who knows that they weren't actually relying on us to eliminate them. They could do it themselves. That's key information there.
I'm going to start with a team. Just it's in tribute to their achievement last night. They gave up a 66-13 run in an NBA basketball game. It's like unthinkable. The Brooklyn Nets, who have already traded away Dennis Schroeder and Dorian Finney-Smith, it's only a matter of time, I think, before they trade guys like Cameron Johnson, D'Angelo Russell, if anyone wants him. We're what, like 1 month away from the Ben Simmons buyout, right? And it's just going to be random young guys doing whatever the rest of the season while they chase that bottom 3 record. And sadly, Jordi Fernandez has won too many games. He's piled up 14 wins already. So Nets are really going to have to redouble their efforts the second half of the season.
Well, so this is the key thing Danny and I have been talking about. Their over-under is 19.5. Will they go over? They would have to go. I mean, so what are they right now?
14 and 27 at the exact halfway point. So they would have to go 6 and 35 the rest of the way. And keep in mind,
I mean, they did win. They did win the previous night in Portland, right?
Yeah. And I mean,
yeah, I think they'll hit the over.
Yeah. I mean, they still have to play Washington 3 times, right? They still have to play Charlotte, Toronto, They still have games against these other motivated adversaries, They play the Pelicans the final week of the season. That should be a game.
Yeah. The Pelicans might feature in our conversation later. So what do you make of where Brooklyn is right now? They're going to have a high draft pick. Much of all for all these teams depends on just which of them gets a true difference maker in this draft. We don't need to get into it too much. You've followed this draft more closely than me. How many like premium prospects do you think there are, like guys that you would think of as like decent chance being a future All-Star in this draft? We don't need to even go through them, but just like in terms of the number for rebuilding purposes.
I'll say 5.
5, okay. So Harper, Ace Bailey, Flag, VJ Edgecombe, and who?
Yakashonis.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't even seen a second of that guy. I'm excited to see him. So, okay. So a decent chance there of Brooklyn getting in the top 5. We'll see. What do you make of the fact that they have this cap space this offseason?
I just don't know who's out there for them to get. Right? That's always the big question when you have the cap space. It's like, okay, because so many good players extend, like, okay, what are you gonna do with this cap space now? You're gonna drop a max on Jake LaRavia? So finding that guy who is worth it and willing to come, I think it's a more difficult needle to thread than it was when they got KD and Kyrie the last time.
No, that's definitely true. That 2019 offseason, I think, is going to go down as one of the 2019 and 2010 and 2016 are just the 3 absolutely crazy ones that we've had. I don't know if we're ever going to see that again. But the other thing that, to me, too, that didn't really make a ton of sense is they traded to get their 2026 pick back, right? It wasn't just 2025. 2025, you knew it was coming at the moment that they traded for that pick back. But they also traded to get their 2026 pick back. So, like, okay, what are they going to sign Brandon Ingram? That something like that would be totally pointless, right? So now 27, they still owe it to the Rockets. So that's kind of what your timeline is they got to be bad. I think they just roll the space over in large part to 26, and then actually, ironically enough, like the Rockets did when they owed the pick to Oklahoma City, then they hit the gas pedal and just spend their money on whoever the best free agents are and try to get to be decent for that year.
And like that would be consistent with trading Cam Johnson, for instance, who would only have the 1 year left on the deal in 26.
Yeah.
Like you use the cap space this summer, you can argue, to take bad contracts from other teams and get paid for it and accumulate your draft capital for another year. Maybe try to do 1 or 2 opportunistic signings of guys in their early 20s who you think are value propositions, but don't go hog wild until the summer of 26. Now you have 2 high draft picks of your own. Maybe 1 or 2 of these young guys pop in addition to that, and then you're selling free agents on a little bit more of a structure and something they're coming into. So
yeah, I guess the Nets, I mean, they're in an okay place. They still have a bunch of picks going forward too. Like, they're just at the very beginning of a rebuild. I just don't think that there's some big thing that's happening this offseason that's going to like really change their friend. Like, there's even been some reporting that like they want to get Giannis. Like, come on, guys. No, just not gonna happen. I don't think. I mean, maybe that's in the summer of 27. Or the idea also is like, well, they have all these draft picks and they can make trades now using some of their open cap space to just go get someone. But that, again, I think it just makes so much more sense in the summer of 2026 when if you could, whoever that season's version of Zach LaVine is, you just can take him.
Yes.
And it'll make you better. You don't care that he's overpaid, and you owe the pick to the Rockets anyway, so you might as well kind of hit the gas and become more respectable at that point. Okay. Anything else on Brooklyn, or should we move on to our
one? Will they roll over the cap space by re-signing Ben Simmons for 1 year and $40 million?
I think they can probably. I mean, they could at least sign someone that they
get
could.
there other ways.
Yeah. Well, or at least sign someone that they can just trade on December 15th at 12:01 a.m. so they don't win too many games, but who's actually good. All right, let's see. Let's hit a couple of questions here, actually. Rob says, if the Suns blow it up, we were talking about them earlier, logical spots for Booker and Durant. Of course, Booker Houston.
Booker
is
Houston.
The one. I mean, Woj even reported that when it happened.
Because then they get their picks back, right?
Yeah.
It would be
no one else can offer them as much.
Jalen Green, and the two future picks for Booker. I think that is
Well,
the
we'll see. The way it's going right now, Jalen Green might be considered a better asset than Devin Booker.
Well, it varies by the day, though, right? Like he's starting to be like on the Norman Powell plan, where like it varies between like that contract looks horrible, that contract looks amazing.
Yeah, we'll see. He's been great lately since the new year, but it also has been historically one of the more inconsistent players. We'll see. Houston, how we feel about them after these playoffs is going to be absolutely fascinating. I thought they were going to take a step back after Jabari got hurt, and that really hasn't been the case at all. I think, and Durant, gosh, what would be a logical place for Durant? Golden State.
It would be a hilarious place.
It really would be the logical place, though. It really would be.
What about,
because most of these teams don't really have the asset, or Oklahoma City would be the other one.
That's a great one. I was going to say to Denver to play with Russ for Porter.
Well, they don't have the assets, though, right?
But I mean, what is the asset cost for KD at this point? I mean, he's got 1 year left.
No, it's going to
be extended. It's still going to be 2-3 firsts. You think, unprotected and all that?
Easily.
Okay.
Easily.
Okay.
Yeah. No, like he still is like for an all-star player who, I mean, the fact that he could fall off a cliff at any time, like nobody cares about that. Like as long as he's playing well now, that's all that matters. And you don't have the concerns about him but like he's someone who can still be effective for a long time in his career as long as he doesn't just get hurt. I mean, he's been really good this year. Like he can't be like the fulcrum of the offense anymore and have your offense be really good, but he obviously is like could just drop 25 efficient points a game and like play passable defense and give you a little rim protection and rebounding. Still, like that is still a really valuable player who fits on 8. Like there'll be so many suitors for him.
That's the thing. Like a KD derby can go a lot of different directions, and he would have if he isn't extended and is up for the extension, he would have some leverage I mean, right? Either way,
Yeah.
I'm thinking like a team like would he go to Memphis? You know, would he go to Houston? Um,
Yeah.
Most of these guys try to get themselves, places a little more glamorous, but you can imagine like Indiana or Orlando being like, hell yeah, let's do this. And, the question is that where he wants to go?
Yeah. No, but we'll see. So that's an aside, but certainly an interesting one. It does seem like that is going to come to a head this offseason once they really struggle and maybe don't even make the playoffs. Okay. Yeah. So we'll hit a few more of these questions as we go on, but I want to eliminate the New Orleans Pelicans from the playoffs. And yes, I mean, obviously I would have eliminated Brooklyn too, but we have already talked about them. I will add them to my ledger as well. But the New Orleans Pelicans, mostly picking them at this point, not necessarily because they're the least likely to make it. There are no shortage of those candidates, but just to talk about them and what the hell they do from here. I mean, Herb Jones is out for the season now, but and Zion just came back. Yeah.
It's not just that he's injured. Like, he was bad. Like, what the hell happened there? Like, last year?
Yeah, he's gotten in shape, but he
just in the league, and this year he's just kind of a random guy running around.
You're talking about Herb Jones?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think he missed a month with a shoulder injury, right? I think people kind of don't give enough credence to those sorts of injuries and what they can do, particularly if your game is like playing physically and athletically and like using your hands and stuff. I think it does lead to just being a little bit more conservative. The season was done already too. Now his shooting has always kind of waxed and waned. I mean, I'm not going to say that like he's not going to be a good defensive player. I thought he wasn't quite as good last year as he had been in the past, and he wasn't that great in the playoffs either. But like he was the biggest reason that they had a passable defense last year, I would say. So I don't know. I'm not going to be at the point where I'm going to assume that he's like not good anymore. And also they're not paying him that much anyway. But they are, the way they're built now, having lost Marshall and Daniels, is he's the only guy on their team who can guard anyone on the perimeter. Like, so it really is a lot of pressure on him, whereas they had other options there before, with both within a game and then of course if he gets hurt.
Yeah. And so that CJ extension is killing them. It cost them Najee Marshall already. Can they move off of this money? $30.6 million next year.
Yeah. Well, they have to move either he or Ingram. And for those who aren't looking
Correct.
at the sheet right now, that's because Trey Murphy goes from 5 to 25 next year. So that's really, you have to move it and not. So as of right now, I mean, if they were to have Ingram coming back at that same number, like they've only got basically $19 million below the tax for next year with no Ingram. So maybe you could trade out CJ and take back 20 and be okay.
But with them being so bad this year, their first round pick is going to add like another 10 now also.
Yeah, I factored that in.
Okay.
We have them projected for the number 4 pick at the moment.
Oof.
$10 million. But so Zion, what did you make of the Zion suspension?
Interesting. If it got to the point where they suspended him on like his second or third game back or whatever it was, that wasn't because he missed. That wasn't because he was late for a flight. Okay, I guarantee you that, right?
No,
it wasn't. He didn't pull up to the airport 7 minutes late one day and they decided to suspend him. Okay, that is not what happened, right? That there was a trail and that people were frustrated and finally decided they'd had it.
Particularly with it's like his second game back.
Yeah, exactly. So that to me is a tell that for whatever reason, culturally or whatever, if it's going to happen for him, I don't think it's going to happen in New Orleans. And it brings up the question what is his trade value? Does anyone else believe in him enough to give something up to get him?
I think so. Or maybe they don't believe in him, but they believe in the chance of it. I think, but like, to me, that kind of a suspension, and whatever, he always at least gives like a good statement on why he's like screwing up in these circumstances. Apologize to the fans, my teammates, all that shit. Like, I think he's like kind of is well intentioned, but also just doesn't have any discipline. Basically, is kind of what it seems like with him. Yeah. But it seems like that them suspending him. I mean, number one, it's just a way to like try to publicly shame him when privately hasn't worked. But also, it's really just a message to the rest of the team. I think that just like we're gonna change this now that like our rotten culture is not going to continue to allow this sort of thing with no consequences.
Right.
But yeah, so that's the thing. They're going to have a top 8 pick, right? We don't know exactly who that's going to be. DeJounte Murray is playing a little better lately, but he's been one of the worst players in basketball since he came back from that broken hand. If you just look at his stats and the number of times that he's shooting, like, he's absolutely killing them. Their defense has been atrocious.
Yeah, somebody who watched a lot of DeJounte in Atlanta, it's really only the last week or two that I feel like I've seen that same pop in his step and like getting into those pull-ups and whatnot. And because when I was watching when he first came back, I was like, I'm thinking to myself, who is this guy? Like, it just didn't look like the same player to me. And now I feel like he's starting to get back into that. I'm interested to see what he does the second half of the season.
Yeah, maybe he just gets back. It just, something has been so rotten there. Like Herb Jones and like even like proven players who've been good just have been terrible there. Like I just, maybe they're just, the fact that the season was over before it even started there is just like it's infected everyone. But
yeah, just a malaise. Yeah.
So I get like, what do you think? I mean, they have a number of things that basically they got to deal with. They got to deal with Ingram. They got to maybe deal with Zion. They got to deal with this tax issue, maybe trading CJ, and then also like a potential draft pick, and just the general decision of, are we going to just like take the draft pick and just keep going forward with this group and see where it leads? Or is it, do we start a total rebuild and trade off some of these guys? Like what is the overall plan there? Now let's assume they get one of these top 5 guys you're talking about, right? Like, which they got a good chance at.
Can I take this one step further back?
Please.
Who will be the person executing this plan also? Is it still going to be Griff and Willie Green this summer, or will either or both of those seats change? I think that's an open question. I know people in the league are asking that question too. So I'm interested to see what happens at that level.
Yeah, I mean, I think Griffin was really under pressure at the end of 2021 when they moved on from Stan, and then he saved himself with that 21 offseason, getting Trey Murphy, Herb Jones, and Jose Alvarado in as young players. Alvarado, I think, wasn't even drafted. So that was an amazing, and so that kind of built this group up. And then he's had the excuse of the injuries and stuff. But I think the fact that the DeJounte trade has gone so sideways, that especially if he doesn't start to play better, that might finally be the death knell.
Well, and if the Lakers miss the playoffs too.
Yeah, because they gave up that pick. They gave up that pick. Just so people remember it, they gave up Dyson Daniels. They gave up the unprotected Lakers pick this year, and then the second best of theirs in Milwaukee in 27.
Yes.
And Larry Nance, who also actually like has a pulse and is still a real player. And Cody Zeller. Let's not forget him.
Still on the chillin' list.
He and PJ Tucker just like getting wasted every single day together.
That would be a great That'd be a great story. Like just
on a beach
hanging
in
out
the
with them,
Bahamas,
watching basketball games in Mazatlan
comparing
or
their
something.
hairlines.
Yeah.
Just like, all right, yeah. What kind of suntan lotion do you use on your head, right? Yeah. So yeah, sneaker shopping. Maz says in the comments. Yeah, that PJ's probably doing a lot of that with his $11 million this year. But all right, so you took it back there. I'll take it back to the question that I asked about New Orleans, which was, what do you do? And I mean, I think I might just try to like, I don't know. The way they're built, it's like they almost have to just like get this rookie in and then try to win. But maybe if Ingram and Zion, it makes more sense to trade those guys, fine. And then we got Herb Jones, we got Trey Murphy. Those are two good support players. And if we get another star in the draft, Yves Missi hopefully could be our center going forward. And maybe that's the route that we take. And then we become one of these big asset teams with, Dylan Harper, and they still would have DeJounte too. That's the other guy maybe they could consider trading. But all these guys just have to play better to have some trade value.
Yeah.
So maybe what you can hope is that you play better this year, don't win too many games, shut everyone down strategically, still get a top 5 pick. But these guys, Ingram and Zion, I mean, Ingram's been out with this grade 2 or grade 3 probably ankle sprain for like 2 months now, or he will be, it seems like. But that these guys play well enough that they have some trade value, and then you could move on from them. But I feel like they're just gonna trade CJ for a guy making $10 million less and draft their guy, and somehow it ends up all running back, even though Ingram, like, he is nowhere else to go unless he gets traded now.
That was the next thing I was going to ask you, is what's the end game here with Ingram? Is it just bringing him back at 1 year, $40 million or something, and seeing if everyone can do better this time?
Yeah, I don't know. There's not a lot of great options for a lot of these teams. I mean, your Pacific Division showed that. I mean, they still have a lot of talent on this team. Like, I thought they're going to win 49 games this year.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, your other problem is Zion himself doesn't even look that great, even when he's healthy. Like, he looks better, but he doesn't actually play better. So it was like, even last year, he wasn't like that good. Everyone only remembers the 40-point game and not the fact that he like didn't really play at an all-star level, even though he was healthy last year. Okay, your turn.
All right. How do I follow up that? I wasn't sure if we should eliminate them, but now that Nick Richards is gone, I think that changes everything for Charlotte. I will eliminate the Charlotte Hornets. 9-28.
Somehow they're 21st on defense now and 29th on offense. I would not have thought that the defense would be better than the offense for this group. But
Basketball Reference has them 16th in defense.
Yeah. I mean, I'm looking at cleaning the glass, so they probably had a great garbage time defense.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, maybe.
Well, they've certainly gotten their reps in those situations. So.
Yeah, they have a lot of time. Okay, so what do you make of the state of the Charlotte Hornets at the moment?
I think that the back end of the roster is quite bad, and that's the easiest thing to fix. So I actually think there's some reason for like mild optimism. You're going to have a high pick this year, obviously. You have LaMelo. Yeah. You have Miller. Mark Williams has looked really good since he came back. Can he sustain that? Can he actually play in the games for more than 2 weeks at a time? Bridges has been, obviously there's the other issues, but when he's like his games, he's played relatively well. He's, gives him another starting caliber player.
Really, but Miles Bridges, I think he's been a disappointment on the floor this year. Like for making $27 million. Like I don't. Nobody wants to trade for him at that number right now. I think they signed that thinking that he might be tradable, and that we've heard zero buzz about him. I think because teams wouldn't be interested.
Yeah, I mean, it was already going to be a tough sell, and now,
yeah, like he's got 54% true shooting as like a athletic power forward. So I don't think that he's a guy that like a winning team wants to go after personally.
I guess where I was going is that it's pretty easy to talk yourself into having a more functional rotation than what they've had. Like right now they're trying to get Salon minutes. I don't really think he can play. They're playing Vasa Micic and he's terrible. Josh Green, that trade has not aged well. That would be the one.
Yeah, well, it didn't taste good when it first came out of the barrel either. So leaving it in there. I mean, you can. I don't know that the Charlotte Hornets are the finest oak to age him in, regardless. But yeah, that's like the fact that they gave something up to take him on at that number was I've generally liked what they've done since the new regime came in, but not in that case.
You do wonder, Cody Martin, I think the Suns were trying to get him in that trade too, and you would think that they might move on from him at some point if the right deal comes along. I mean, he's non-guaranteed next year, so it's not urgent, but they just need to keep building. You look.
Let me ask you this. Let me frame it this way. Who matters who's on this team right now? Who are you like, these are the guys we're building around if you're Jeff Peterson and company?
You're saying LaMelo Ball and hopefully Mark Williams and Brandon Miller.
Okay.
And hopefully Salon, because you drafted him 6th, but there's no evidence that he's that guy yet.
No, I wouldn't be able to say that he has shown enough that, like, when I say we're building around someone, my thinking is I wouldn't bring in someone over the top of this guy. I just assume this position is filled. We don't need to improve it. This guy's going to develop, and let's concentrate somewhere else. That's kind of the thinking that I have. So, yeah, I guess it's those 3 guys, right? Yeah. Now, but if you have a chance to bring in another on-ball star in the draft, you certainly would, right? Like you're 100%. Still taking best player available.
Yeah, because I mean, one of the questions that they need to ask themselves is, do they actually want to be in the LaMelo Ball business, or would they rather have somebody else be the centerpiece?
Yeah, it's just we've never really seen in the last, 20 years or so that I can recall a player in that position, 5th year of his rookie scale deal and, was an all-star before, just get traded for exactly what you're talking about, right? If they decide they don't want to be in the LaMelo Ball business, then if you're acquiring him, suddenly you don't want to be in the LaMelo Ball business either. Yeah. Why wouldn't they just want to keep him and build around him? And okay, like, should there be a package of like 4 first-rounders to trade for, like, if Orlando or something, who probably can't fit him into their salary structure, honestly, wants to trade for LaMelo Ball, and they would give up 4 first-rounders or 3 and Anthony Black, whatever it would be, I guess I would list on that. They're just, you don't see these kinds of trades made. I mean, you said they need to decide whether they want to be in the LaMelo Ball business. Would you want to be in the LaMelo Ball business?
I think right now they don't have any option but to be in that business. But yeah. I think it's worth. The thing is, when you're on the team side, you may not know what the exact trade is, but you know what the interest level is and who's interested if you're doing your job right. And
even for someone like him, you would say, like, if you have a player of his ilk, who's supposedly a franchise cornerstone, leading the East in all-star guard votes, that there's at least some understanding that whether there'd be a market for him or not.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Like the thing I can relate it to is, when Mark was first team All NBA for us, Marc Gasol, we shut down anyone who asked about him, but we also knew who was asking about him, and that it was most of the league, So it didn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that, like, okay, there's probably a pretty robust market if this ever comes to it.
Yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, for me, it's it doesn't really matter whether they'd like to be in the LaMelo business or not. Just the stars you have are the stars you have in a lot of circumstances. And I think if they did try to move him, but yeah, now if other teams are calling about him and you might just say, yeah, bowl us over, and then something comes out and you're like, all right, fine. Like that's one thing, but it's the difference between that and if they go out and try to shop him, then I think teams are like, oh yeah, why are they doing that?
Yeah. I think if you're going to do something like this, it's Clippers with Blake Griffin, it's Utah with Deron Williams, where you're doing it under cover of darkness and
commando style. There's no auction process. You get a deal you really like and you make it before anyone's the wiser.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think they need one more piece. Mark Williams, I'm not sure if he can be just like such a defensive anchor because that's my big thing is just how are they getting better on defense? I think Brandon Miller can be maybe a part of a good defense, but not like the number one guy on the perimeter. So they really need a small forward and a power forward. I think it would be awesome if you could have a group where LaMelo is your 1 and Brandon Miller is your 2, and then you have 2 guys who can shoot at the 3 and the 4 who can also defend and are athletic. Then I think you kind of have something like, at least, Brandon Miller and LaMelo aren't the toughest guys, but they at least have size. If they're your 1 and your 2, then maybe you and Mark Williams is huge too. Like maybe that can kind of be your idea, but you also are of the idea that like we're 29th in offense right now with LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller. So are those good enough to be our 2 on-ball stars? Maybe not. Maybe Brandon Miller has to be your 3rd option, and LaMelo could play off the ball a little bit more, concentrate more on his shooting, or you get someone who can really create better in the half court, which is my concern about LaMelo. He's not a great half court offensive creator.
Yeah.
Okay, let's do one more team, and I guess that leaves it to me. So this will be a good one, actually. The Portland Trailblazers, they are 13-26, but they have the point differential of a team that is on pace for 20 wins. They've actually won 3.4 games more than expected. They just have an amazing ability to just get completely blown out on certain nights. Hey, Scoot Henderson had a career high 39 against Brooklyn in an actual NBA game. We know it was an NBA game because they didn't even win that game.
Yeah,
it had to be a team of some quality. But where does it go from here, from Portland's perspective? If you're Joe Cronin, another one who might be in a little bit of trouble, by the way. Not that I've heard that specifically. That's just looking at the situation from afar.
Him and Chauncey Billups both. I think you have to get something for some of these veterans, right? Like, what are we doing here? When you look at Simons, Jeremy Grant, we've talked about his contract before. I think they may have already missed their moment with him. DeAndre Ayton, I think, has negative value, right? They might be stuck with that one, and he's blocking their lottery pick from playing, although Donovan Clingan is hurt now. Robert Williams probably hasn't been healthy enough to generate a market quite yet. That might be more of a summer thing. But I just think you have to start getting something for these guys and building your draft capital, because your future team, or what you're hoping your future team is Avdia, Scoot Henderson, Shaden Sharp, Klingon, and whoever you get in these next 2 draft cycles, right? And Tumani Camera, I guess, would be part of that too.
As much as I liked Scoot and Sharp in the draft, and I still believe they have more potential than maybe a lot of people do, I think you're fooling yourself if you're saying like these are our future all-stars right now. They're more kind of lottery tickets. So you need to, and that's why I thought the Avdia thing didn't really make a lot of sense, because you make that deal when your young guys are at a point where they can really blast off and get you at least into like play-in contention if you put some pieces around them, and they were never at that point. And I don't know that they're going to be at that point even next year or the year after that, unless these guys take a really unanticipated step forward. So another team that's hoping for help in the draft. And in terms of picks going out, hilariously, they actually owe a top 14 protected pick to Chicago through 2028. Don't think that's going anytime soon. And then they got a swap with Milwaukee in 28 from the Lillard deal. And then they have the best and worst of Portland, Milwaukee, Boston in 29, and then a swap with Milwaukee in 30. So in terms of outright future picks, they've got their +1. So yeah, they definitely could use more there. It's just, I think the value of all these guys is pretty bad right now. Grant, Simons, Ayton was never going to, he was always considered a bad contract, but Grant and Simons in particular are guys that I think they really might have missed the boat on moving.
Yeah. You might even put Matisse Thybulle in there too.
He hasn't played even this year,
yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Like that was another one of these moves that just makes no sense at all to me. Like Matisse Thybulle is a guy who's like an 8th man on a good team coming in as a defensive specialist. Like, why did they need to match that offer from Dallas? I guess because they traded for him, but that's just for a team that's this close to the tax, having $11 million of just not really anything on your books.
Because they can't get draft picks and money deals basically because they're so far up against the tax. And then even, they're looking at being handcuffed this offseason where they might not be able to use any of their exception money, basically.
They project to be over the tax this offseason.
Yeah. I mean, they can do, they can do small ball to get under the tax, but they're just going to be blocked from doing anything important unless they trade Simons or Grant or... Now, the one interesting thing they might be able to do once you get to this summer is you have Ayton as an expiring at 35, and that might open some doors where... But what are you trading him for? You're trading him for a contract somebody else doesn't want at that point, unless you're throwing picks in, which I don't think Portland should be in that business. So even then, I'm not sure. Yeah. I'm not sure. I'm saying it opens things up, but I'm not sure it opens up anything that's really that enticing for them.
Well, and their other problem is, again, with the money, if you're trying to trade Jeremy Grant or you're trying to trade Anthony Simons, but you also have to take exactly that amount back or less, most of these teams that might want him are also trying to get savings in the same deal. So the fact that you can't offer them that, or now you have to put in more assets to the deal to get a third team to take something, like that really hamstrings them. Honestly, like if I were them, I might even consider just like stretching Thybulle this offseason. Just to like give themselves a little bit more room. Because once you, after 26, then a lot of these guys come off the books and you're fine. You got plenty of room in 26. So why not just give yourself the breathing room this offseason to make some of these trades and not be just like totally up against it where you have no flexibility.
I got to be honest. When you said stretch, I didn't think you were going to say Thybulle.
Well, Jeremy Grant just has too much money left.
Yeah, I thought you were saying stretch the final year of Ayton. Just open things up.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be...
It's not,
honestly, that wouldn't be totally insane.
It's not that
wouldn't
crazy,
be totally
right?
Insane. No, it's not. Because they just have nothing on their books for the 2 years after this. Yeah. And, yeah, I mean, he's just... like just having him on your team too is just, it's so rotten for your culture. Like just watching him sleepwalk around there all the time and like still sort of be better than the guys you have, and like you're playing him to showcase him, but there's no amount of casing that's going to make him look good. Like it doesn't matter where you put him in the store, he's still going to look exactly the same. So
yeah. I mean, like in contrast, like Jeremy Grant is playing. He just hasn't played well, but like it's never. You're not questioning his effort when he's out there or whatever.
Do you? I mean, we talked about him some already last week, but I mean, Grant is. I don't think you could get a first round pick for him right now, right? Unless you're taking back something like Sotok.
Yeah, you get a first round pick if you take back Bradley Beal or something, but in more realistic trade constructions, no, I don't see that at all.
Yeah, that actually maybe both sides should look into that. Grant for real. But again, of course, the Blazers, like if the Blazers weren't so close to the tax themselves, you could actually do something like that, right? That would help you move Grant.
Yeah. That actually would be a kind of interesting trade. It would, like Beal and that Suns 2031 pick for Grant, and maybe you could probably stuff one more contract. For Grant and Robert Williams, right?
Yeah.
Like that'd be sort of interesting. But yeah, then you could stretch Ayton to accommodate it.
So this is actually another thing that I think they should do. Tamani Kamara is 25 already. Pretty good defender, like gotten a little bit better as a shooter this year. But he makes so little. But he doesn't, like I wasn't on board with the Avdia trade for this reason too, that he's sort of a support player that it just doesn't really matter that you have him these next couple of years when you're going to suck anyway. Like he just doesn't serve that great of a purpose. By the time you're ready to go as a team, he's either on a new contract, making properly paid, or he just hasn't contributed that much on this super cheap contract. I think they should trade him. I think he would have, like, you could get a pretty good first back for him, I would guess, because he makes so little for one of these apron teams.
If you could get a first for him, I think they should drive him to the airport. Yeah, absolutely. Post haste.
I think they could, like a team like the Bucks, or I mean Phoenix would probably love to have him back, right? Although Ryan Dunn is, or like the Lakers, he'd be a good fit on the Lake. Like there are a lot of these teams that just would say, yeah, all you got to do on offense is stand in the corner and shoot threes. You've made a few of those, and you're like a good defensive player, and you're under contract for $2 million the next 2 years. Like I think they absolutely could get a first for him, but that's something that they would never consider, it seems like.
Yeah.
Because he was a find that they found, that they got, and they need to be tough. Respectable or whatever.
It's always harder when it's like your guy and your success story. You see that over and over in the league. Like the teams that are brave enough to be willing to do moves with their own kind of victory lap guys. Those are the front offices that I really admire. Like it takes such stones to do that.
Yeah. One of my favorite trades in NBA history was the Sixers trading Michael Carter Williams, and that was a great trade.
Yeah.
And I would actually argue that was one of the things that got Hinkie fired more than anything, because of just the optics of it. That to draft a guy who was rookie of the year and then trade him away, because the optics of it were, you're just trying, like this guy was too good and we're trying to trade him away to tank more, when in reality they realized that the guy wasn't that good, and they managed to get like a really good pick. I think they got that Lakers pick for him in that deal, if memory serves. But anyway, that's too far afield. And hey, Hinkie got fired for that. That's probably what the people in Portland would be worried about at this point. All right, I think we're done here. This is good. Good to catch up on some of these teams, and this will be the last time we talk about any of them until the summer. So enjoy, everyone.
Are you saying we won't have any Blazers trades to talk about in a couple weeks?
No, we will. I hope we do. I hope they're able to trade some, because like I do like some of their young players. Like I want to see them succeed. I want them just selfishly because I'm watching games late on Pacific time zone. Like I want them to be watchable, which they at least have been this year. Like they haven't had too many games where they're just sort of like, there's nothing to see here. All right. I digress. Thanks so much for joining us here on Hollinger and Duncan. You can subscribe to our mailing list for free. Link to that is in the show notes. You get Dan Feldman's Daily Dunks twice per week. And we'll be starting a promo code momentarily for Dunked On Prime in honor of our upcoming mock trade deadline. And of course, the trade deadline, great time to sign up for Dunked On Prime. Get every Hollinger and Duncan and also me and Danny 5 days a week, and Dan Feldman's writing 5 days a week as well. Talk to you all again very soon on Hollinger Duncan.